Muy buenos días, ya estamos de vuelta en Negocios Televisión. Llega el momento de presentar el proyecto del que está hablando todo el mundo. Todo el mundo en las últimas semanas, en los últimos meses, habla de inteligencia artificial, habla de ChatGPT, habla, por supuesto, de su CEO, de Sam Altman, que ahora se ha lanzado al mundo cripto, al mundo de las criptomonedas, ha presentado Worldcoin, un proyecto que, como digo, está dando mucho que hablar. Ayer salían imágenes en las redes sociales de colas interminables de gente pues, que quiere escanearse su iris, que quiere conseguir estos tokens y, sobre todo, que quiere educarse, que quiere saber, quiere conocer más sobre la tecnología blockchain y sobre este proyecto pues, que está revolucionando el mundo y, sobre todo, el mundo cripto, tal y como lo conocemos. Y entonces, por eso, vamos a presentar pues, a uno de los expertos. En concreto, vamos a presentar a Ricardo Macieira. Es el director para Europa de este proyecto, es el director para Europa de Worldcoin y ya está aquí con nosotros. Thanks for coming here, Ricardo.
Thank you so much for having me, Sergio.
Can you explain us the project? What about Worldcoin? What is Worldcoin?
Yeah, so Worldcoin is this project. It was initiated by Sam Altman and our CEO, Alex Banya, with the premise of understanding how can we basically identify or at least distinguish between a human and a bot on the digital world. And if you can do, and if you on top of that can also add a financial system on top of this would be very powerful, right? So that's why we decided to create Worldcoin. And when we started developing the project, we had this concept of, okay, let's create this token, distribute it fairly to as much people as we can do it. And as we started looking at the ways to do it, we came across with this problem of civil resistance, which is how to distinguish a bot from a human. That's where the orb came in. We looked at many potential ways of doing this distinguishing, but it was very hard. We didn't want to build hardware, like it wasn't in our roadmap, but we realized there wasn't any other way, because if you wanted to make this project as inclusive as possible, we had to do it. So, for example, we looked at potentially using your ID, like your DNA card, right? But if we look at the statistics, almost half of the population doesn't have even an ID or an ID that can be used digitally. So the way we found that we could make it more accessible was through biometrics, because at the end, this is the only thing that's completely unique to you. And in this case, the biometric item that has more information is your iris. So we created the orb, that basically what it does is basically identifies if the person in front of it is a human, if it's a living human, and then what it does is basically it takes two images, one of each of your irises. With that, generates a code, deletes the images of the iris, sends the code to the database, and then it compares with all the other codes that are there. If there's no similar code, it means that you haven't registered, and it basically lets you unlock your World ID and generate this privacy-preserving digital identity. And we believe that this primitive is going to be very powerful for the years to come, and we've seen with ChatGPT and all the challenges that artificial intelligence has, that this will be very useful in, I'm not going to say the next few years, but I think in the next few months it will have a big impact.
Nos explicaba Ricardo pues, que al final la idea de Worldcoin es crear un sistema más inclusivo, seguramente algo más que el sistema económico que tenemos actualmente, y además nos explicaba por qué utilizan el iris a la hora de crear esta identidad digital, pues que al final lo que hace es verificar pues, que no eres un bot, que eres una persona humana y que en este caso puedes acceder a estos tokens. Estamos viendo aquí este aparato, Ricardo, seguro que los espectadores se están fijando, seguro que alguno ya lo ha visto también. Quiero que nos expliques qué es este orb, what is this orb, and how does it work?
Yeah, so the orb was designed by Thomas Meyerhofer. He was a former Apple designer. He also worked at Porsche. And basically what it does is this, is basically it enables for people that stand in front of it, or basically it identifies if the person that's in front of it is a human, it's a real human, and then it basically uses its biometrics to generate this iris code. It deletes all its biometrics by default, and then it sends into our database this code, which will be compared with all our other databases. So basically, it was the only solution that we were able to come up with to basically create the World ID, this completely inclusive identity system for this new world.
And can you explain a little the roadmap about Worldcoin, about the token? There is it has been launched this week.
Yes.
And how is it going? And what is the future of this token and this project?
Yeah, so the launch has been a massive success. We're super happy with the interest that it's generating. So right now we did this big push, and we had orbs in multiple cities around the world. Some of them temporary, some of them with fixed locations. And what we're doing is a stage rollout and opening up countries as we are prepared to do so. In Europe, we are already in Portugal, Spain, and Germany. Right now, Spain is one of our biggest operations, or the biggest operations in Europe, where we have around 13 locations right now between Madrid, Barcelona, and Palma. And we hope in the next few months open a few more locations in other cities around the country.
And why are you located in Spain?
So we started in Portugal because it was our first test market, and that's where we kind of test some of the assumptions. And then as we decided what would be the next one, we decided to go to one of the most important markets in Europe, which was Spain, right? And because we also see that in terms of technology adoption, it's also a very good market, we decided to roll out. We started almost a year ago, or I think a little bit over a year ago, in Madrid, and we've been growing since, and we're super happy to be here. We're also starting our own team here based out of Barcelona, where I'm based from. So Spain is going to have a massive importance for our European rollout in the next couple of years.
Importante lo que nos comentaba ahora Ricardo, que España va a ser un punto muy importante para este proyecto. Llevan más o menos un año establecidos aquí. Hay muchísimos centros comerciales, seguro que muchos de nuestros espectadores ya han pasado por allí, porque últimamente las colas, últimamente el FOMO con este proyecto es brutal. Y en 30 centros comerciales aquí en España ya puedes pasar y ya puedes escanear tu iris y a cambio obtener estos tokens. Una de las mayores controversias, de las mayores polémicas que ha despertado este proyecto, también un poco por desconocimiento, es precisamente el uso de los datos, la privacidad de los usuarios. Y te quiero preguntar por esto, Ricardo, what about the privacy
Yes.
of this project, about the data? What are you doing with this data?
Yeah, so our project has this concept of privacy by design on the way it's designed, right? That's why what I was mentioning in the way the orb works, right? So nothing leaves the orb if the user doesn't allow it to leave. By default, the biometrics that is used to generate the codes are deleted from our system. So we don't even have biometrics to store, right? So even though it might sound a little bit counterintuitive, so you're using biometrics to do something that's 100% private, that's the reality of it. So the way that it works, because it deletes everything, it allows us to basically, first of all, include everyone in the world, because everyone has their own biometrics. We can be able to scale this at the level we want to do it. We want to have billions of people being able to claim their Worldcoin token and having access to the World ID. And through the biometrics, we can do that. And the reality is that when you download the app and you create an account, you don't need to share any data. You don't need to add your email. You don't need to add your mobile phone. You can skip all these steps and just get your World ID in a super private way. So this was the most robust way. There can be other ways, and we are happy to listen about other ideas that other people might have, because at the end, this was the solution we were able to find. If there's other solutions, we'll gladly work on it and assess them.
Nos explicaba Ricardo el punto más importante, que estos datos son eliminados. Además, nos cuenta que hay una opción para saltarse todos estos pasos y que la gente que se escanea el iris o que quiere obtener estos tokens no tiene por qué compartir sus datos. Así que, desde luego, una preocupación menos. Y antes de terminar, Ricardo, quiero preguntarte, bueno, por otro hecho relevante, vinculado, ya sé que no es precisamente de este proyecto, pero Sam Altman habla mucho de la renta básica universal. Este proyecto también crea la infraestructura y quiero que nos expliques un poquito what about this, what about the universal basic income and about the infrastructure that you are doing.
This was one of our building blocks to create this project, right? Because Sam is a believer of universal basic income, and he wanted to see if it was possible to build the infrastructure, and that's what we're trying to do, right? And that's why we created the orb in the way that it's 100% inclusive, because if you cannot identify a single human or at least give them an identity because they don't have papers, that wouldn't be inclusive, and that wouldn't make possible to have universal basic income. So the way we see it is we don't believe Worldcoin is the universal basic income, even though it would be very cool. But what we're doing is building the infrastructure that if at the future a government institution, another company wants to establish universal basic income, there's the basic infrastructure to do so. And we really believe that's very powerful. In order to do this, you need these two fundamentals, which is the ID, and hopefully in the way that we're doing it in a privacy-preserving way, which we haven't seen other projects doing so, and then the financial infrastructure that we have through our World App, and that blockchain basically allows it to be done. So hopefully we can see other projects basically working on top of what we're doing. Because, and one last note, all that we're doing is going to be open source. So we're building for the community. So if in the future someone wants to build their own orb, they will be able to do that because the orb is going to be open source. It already is open source, part of it. So we are actually building so that the whole humanity can benefit from the project.
Muy importante esto último que cuenta Ricardo, este proyecto es de código abierto, por eso aparte de que está sentando las bases, la infraestructura, por si hay alguna entidad, alguna empresa o algún gobierno que quisiera implementar esta renta básica universal, pues únicamente tiene que construir sobre lo que ya está hecho. Bueno, muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros, Ricardo, un placer, esperamos que os vaya genial y sobre todo que volváis y nos contéis pues que está yendo por lo menos igual de bien que en este lanzamiento, que es complicado hacer.
Muchas gracias por todo.
Bueno, pues hasta aquí esta entrevista de este proyecto, de Worldcoin, este proyecto del que habla todo el mundo, como les decíamos, encabezado por Sam Altman, por el fundador, por el CEO de ChatGPT, y un proyecto que seguro que va a dar mucho que hablar y además que yo creo que no va a haber muchas entrevistas, así que nada, les dejamos con esta entrevista y seguimos con la mejor programación aquí en Negocios Televisión.